Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Independent Mindset, the podcast for candid conversations, staying curious, and being better. Now, I know some of you may be wondering, wait, the Independent Mindset? What about thought crimes? I thought you guys were called Thought Crimes. Yes, in fact, our podcast was the Thought Crimes podcast. With a bit of discussion, rejigging, rebranding, we've decided to come up with the Independent Mindset. We think this will represent us and our brand much better and allow us to not necessarily be pigeonholed when the opportunity arises to interview certain people or discuss certain conversations. So welcome for the first time and kind of once again to the Independent Mindset. If you guys ever feel like doing us a favor, feel free to leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you especially liked a certain episode or topic, please let us know on Instagram or share with your friends who you know enjoys the topic just as much. I know both Jason and I would really appreciate that. Now, for today's episode, we had the pleasure of chatting with Brian Kehoe. Brian is a professor and fitness expert based out of Ottawa, Canada. Brian began his career as sports scientist, consulting with multiple NHL organizations and Olympic teams to optimize athletic performance. Transitioning to research, he studied the mechanisms that underpin military fitness. And now, as a professor, and may I say, fitness coach, he educates hundreds of aspiring fitness professionals each year. So in today's episode, we were able to cover the differences between working with athletes versus working with your everyday normal guy or gal, mindset for weight loss, dieting, nutrition, and sleep hygiene, and fitting exercise into your day during COVID, something I think all of us are having a hard time with these days. Although a great discussion, we covered only a fraction of what we'd like to cover with Brian. So we'll be sure to try and have him on back again in the future. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, Brian Kehoe, nice to have you on the show, buddy. How's it going?
It's going well, man. It's good to be here. It's going to be one of our more sober conversations, I think.
Right on. Yeah. So for the audience, Brian and I know each other quite a bit. Our wives and girlfriends work together. Wife and girlfriend work together. So they're close friends. So figured we'd have Brian on the show. So thanks a lot for taking the time. First of all, before we get into the fitness nitty gritty, maybe tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from. Because I know you're from Ireland. So maybe talk about your journey to Canada and a little bit of how you got into fitness.
Sure. So kind of born and bred in Ireland, despite the fact that my accent's kind of gone now. I know anytime I talk online, I get like messages from home being like, you can't even tell you're from Ireland. But I'm from like a tiny little town. Like when I was growing up, like 5,000 people, like in the southeast of Ireland. So super small, knew everyone. My mom was the principal of the only high school in the region. So she knew everyone, knew everyone's parents, taught most people's parents. And it was a place where I could get away with like nothing. Like every cop,
I know how that feels.
Yeah. So like super fun, like super active, super like involved in sports all through my life. Actually, I just kind of recently was talking to some people about like the role of parents on like your activity, participation in sports and so on. And like my mom was someone who would drive me everywhere. And I feel like anytime she wasn't working, it was like arranging sport for me. So I was always heavily involved in sports or at kind of activities with her. So when it came time to like going to university, probably stupidly now, but like there was no pressure on me to go into a career that would be financially profitable or intelligent. It was more so go do something you enjoy and like we'll all get along just fine sort of thing. And then like 10 years into the fitness industry, this was definitely not the easiest route to take. But I went off and I did sports science down in the University of Limerick in Ireland, so on the other side of the country. I think part of that was to get away from like the small town syndrome. All of my friends went to Dublin. Like every single one of my buddies who graduated with me from high school went to Dublin. I wanted to get away and kind of explore a little bit. So went to Limerick, got into sports science, and then from there like absolutely loved it. Loved the coaching components, and got involved with Munster Rugby, which is one of the pro rugby teams that's based out of our university. Do a lot of their training there. So I kind of volunteered with their sub academies, like they're young guys who they're keeping an eye on. And that was like my first real exposure to the strength and conditioning world, and just absolutely loved it. Thought I wanted to work with athletes all along. In third year, we have to do like a 9-month field placement. So like kind of like your co-op here. I know like I've worked with like the University of Ottawa students. I actually used to supervise them, but theirs was like 100 hours over a semester. Whereas ours was like your summer vacation plus one semester, either the semester before or the semester after. So I actually landed an internship in Ottawa for that at a sports science lab out in Canada, which is primarily just like physiological testing. So like VO2 max assessments, blood work, and training people according to their individual physiological response to exercise, as opposed to like a cookie cutter approach. So that kind of brought me into the deeper science of things. As an intern there, like we started I was working with like multiple NHL organizations, like monitoring their athletes. I was working with fire departments. We were working with the military. We were even like doing like nuclear safety and evacuation procedures for certain facilities. And this is at like 20 years old with no real life experience. So I was just blown away. I'm like, this field exists. Like, this is badass. Stayed there for like 7 years, and it was primarily like, yeah, like Olympic teams and athletes and so on, but like a lot of like recreationally competitive endurance athletes. So that was kind of like the meat and potatoes of that business. I wasn't an endurance athlete by any means, but I thought like it was more fun to work with the endurance athletes than say like hockey players, because I could have a very direct, measurable effect on their performance. Right. If I turn a great hockey player into a slightly stronger great hockey player, like I can't account for how many points they put up. Right. Whereas in endurance sports, if I improve your VO2 max or improve your lactate threshold or aerobic threshold, that has a direct outcome on your performance that I'm like, okay, like my work is actually going towards. I boost your VO2 max. If you're a marathon runner, we improve your ability to oxidize fats and preserve glucose. We can see that effect in action because it's aside from like mechanics and so on, and like when you go to the recreational level, like mechanics may be less important. It's just incredible when you can see somebody have like a massive improvement. I think of one guy I worked with, like a competitive cyclist in the city. The first time I ever did like an incremental aerobic test on him. So imagine like on a bike, on a trainer, starting off at like 100 watts. And increasing by 30 watts every 3 minutes, looking at gas exchange, looking at blood response. He maxed out at 300 watts on his first test. And then 18 months later, he's holding 300 watts for 3 hours.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
That's insane.
And you can graph that, and you see I would graph and show that like every 12 weeks we'd reassess. And it's like, okay, you see like what's happening to like your blood lactate concentrations, you see what's happening to gas exchange and so on. And then you're adapting the training based on your periodization principles, but also on how the human body is adapting. And at the end of that, he's still like, when he's at 300 watts, for him, he's trying just as hard as he originally was at 150, right? But now he's pushing out twice the power and sustaining for the same duration. And you show that in front of him, and he's like, this is insane, right? Like, you never get that with a hockey player on performance, right? It's like, hey, look, we took you from like, 10 points a season to like 80 points a season. Like no strength and conditioning coach has ever done that for a hockey player.
It's all because of Brian.
Exactly. And so I think like the endurance sports really allow me to feed my ego and pretend that I'm this like super coach, whereas the hockey training or sports might not.
So from there, just before we get into the nitty gritty, because I know Jason is itching to ask you some more in-depth scientific questions here, but before we get into that, so after your work in Canada in those test labs, because now you're a personal trainer and you also teach, right, at a college?
Yeah. So I guess like, so you kind of look at wondering how did I make the jump from like a sports scientist with a lab coat to like short shorts and tank tops?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so my supervisor at that facility actually took a professor job. So as I was leaving that to come back home and finish my undergrad, they offered me his position. So I knew I basically had a year to finish my undergrad, and then came back and started to work at that facility and stayed there for like 7 years and got up to like a senior sports science role. And then like it was getting to the point where like I was like super ambitious, but it's someone else's company, and kind of the visions I had for what I wanted it to become didn't really align with them. So I'm like, you know what, maybe I'm not the best guy for you anymore. And I decided to move on, went back to do my master's in like physiology. And then around that time, my buddy bought like a personal training. He had an athletic training facility, and he bought like a group fitness personal training studio. So I jumped on board to help him out with, actually originally just with his athletes. And I didn't want anything to do with group fitness. I'm like, maybe I saw it as beneath me. I was used to being in like the elite athlete kind of sphere, like just always working with athletes, like in that mindset. And then they were short staffed, so I started teaching some classes, and I was like, this is actually really fun, like really, really fun, and actually incredibly rewarding.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you're working with these individuals where like this is the best part of their day, right? Like they're government workers or whatever, like accountants, doctors, like in around the city. They're getting up at 5:30 to be at the gym for 5:45 for a workout, and that's like what they wake up for. They leave their kids in bed, or they finish their day. And I started to realize that this was like a crazy positive environment, right? Like nobody goes to the dentist and you're like, oh, so happy to see my dentist. But like as a group fitness instructor, like people really value their relationship with you, or as a personal trainer, like you are literally the best part of their day. And I started to get feedback from like people in group classes. Like two of them really struck home. Like one guy had been overweight his whole life. And was actually like, man, he's like, I just want to tell you, you've completely changed my relationship with exercise. He's like,
that's awesome.
He's like, he's like, I come to the gym because I don't want to miss it. Like, I'm so excited to be here. And we kind of implemented some like sport, like strength and conditioning, like principles more so into the group fitness environment. So like doing 1 rep max or predicted max testing, and then using that to like program at least a few of their exercises. So week over week, they had challenges. And you're getting them away from like focusing on like weight loss and more so on like building strength and actually having measurable success. And all of a sudden this guy's like, man, he's like, you've changed my relationship with exercise. Like it gave me the chills when he said it to me. I'm like, dude, I'm like, I give you maybe 2 or 3 pieces of feedback a day because there's 30 of them in class. And then another girl said the same thing to me. She's like, you know what? I now come here because I deserve it and I enjoy it, not because I'm like drinking on the weekend and I'm overweight. And I was like, dude, no athlete has ever thanked me for, like, they thanked me for making them a better athlete and investing time. But like, I've never changed. Like, if they weren't with me, they'd just be with someone else, And so it was like, man, this is actually a little bit more meaningful than working with athletes to me at that point in my life. And then I just dove headfirst into like the more personal training and group fitness because it was a blast. Like, this is super rewarding. These people need it more than endurance athletes, and maybe I need it more than endurance athletes. Like these positive relations, than athletes. I need it more than the athletes, working with the public rather than athletes because it's more rewarding. So that's kind of where I stayed in the personal training, and then around. I kind of jump all over the place, but I was also then took on a teaching job at the college at the same time. So in the like kind of fitness and health promotion, so bringing people into the fitness industry for that same type of thing, personal training, group fitness, and so on. So the two of those really began to complement each other, and that just snowballed from there. That's what kind of that leads me up to today for the most part, I guess.
And is it just that kind of work and that kind of path that kept you in Canada, or is there another reason?
Well, see, so most countries are good, right? They're able to like build empires and take over. Ireland has this great program where they just send people around the world and we slowly breed our way into all these other countries. So it's actually a massive government program to keep me here and to spread the Irish seed.
Gotcha. I'm part of that seed.
Yeah. So no, in all seriousness, yeah, like I came here because I was like, fuck it, I got offered a job. Why not? Like love the city, like love what it has to offer in terms of just like overall health, overall well-being. Okay, met a girl that kind of keeps you here. I say like everything keep me in Ottawa. If she decided that she wanted to move to a different country, like hands down, I would just up and move. Like,
okay.
I'm happy with like any type of nomadic lifestyle or any city in the world you can start over.
Yeah.
But I'm also super content to stay here.
Right. Training is it is a better job than others for that. Before we get to our fun segment, and then I let Jason take over. Yeah. Last question for me here is name, other than your family, name one thing that you miss from Ireland, and then one thing that you prefer in Canada.
The drinking culture, I certainly miss.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's it's a blessing and a curse, I think, in Ireland, because there's a lot of negatives that come with overconsumption of alcohol. But like there's something special about like the small snug pub with your friends or people you don't know, and just having a couple of drinks and like sharing stories and tales and laughs. That's something that you don't see here quite as much. I think I saw it on the East Coast when I was over, but that's certainly something that I miss. But here, it's the availability of having an active lifestyle. Right, Ireland is gray and rainy most of the year, which isn't favorable for any activity. Whereas Canada, you like Ottawa, it's like I got sunburned yesterday in April, right? I feel like I have to wear that's why I should have long sleeves on today. So you can get out, you can cycle, there's bike paths, you can get out, you can run like there's canals, you can rent boats, you can rent kayaks, canoes, whatever you want. And then in the winter, there's an abundance of sports and activities available to you. So like just the physical and mental health kind of benefits of being in Canada can't be, or at least in Ottawa, can't be ignored.
Yeah, I mean, even Ottawa, because Brian and I are both in Ottawa. It's the capital of Canada, but even as a metropolitan, it's a great place for sport and or just doing things outside. It does do a good job of that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So now we're just going to jump into our segment, and Brian has agreed to happily participate here. So this segment is called Canceled.
Finish him.
Where we identify or try to predict what will be canceled or attempted to be canceled next. So let's start with Jason here. Jason, what will be canceled next?
Man, I think Monopoly's on the chopping block. I'm seeing that it's a big old game about capitalism, and there's only one winner. There's a whole bunch of losers, and it ends up someone has all the money and everyone else has a sweet fuck all. So I think that's going to go.
All right.
Yeah. For me, oh man, so this one I was wrecking my head. I'm like, do I go super serious with it? Like, do I go funny? I think we're looking at like some regulation on retail investing. I'm curious to see what's going to come out there, because I'm a big Redditor. I follow that along, and there's been a couple of like, we'll say semi-big wins on Reddit.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue GameStop. But like, I'm like, this is why people, like, so many people are losing money in there right now, you're well within your rights to lose your money. But I just think there's going to be a little bit more control on that. Like, we've never seen this level before, right? Like, Wall Street can't get my mom's investments because she doesn't even know what she has. Like, her bankers take care of that, right? And it's like,
right.
Boomers have no clue about what they're investing in. It's there for my retirement. Whereas now we've got like a generation of people stuck to their phones, looking at the greens and the reds and buying and selling based on that. And I think maybe there's going to be some more regulation around idiots like me investing my money.
All right. I like it. So I will go for a board game as well called, I don't know, Brian, if you've ever played this, but Jason and I used to play this game. It's called Guess Who?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have you get where I'm going with this.
Is it a person?
Is it a person? Yeah, exactly. Should I leave it at that? So, do they have glasses? What can you ask nowadays?
Is their hair curly?
Do they have a nose?
That's actually pretty funny.
So that's mine. Anybody who's never played Guess Who, just look it up and wonder how much longer this can last.
That's so funny.
So anyways, yeah, that was our recurring segment called Canceled. And now, Jason, I know Jason wants to nerd out here with you and ask you a few questions.
Oh, don't make me look stupid, Jason. You gotta.
Oh man, I'm so removed out of the game too since my last little bit of exercise physiology and that. Like, I'm like the equivalent of a weekend warrior when it comes to exercise science now.
Okay, that's good. Me too.
Who you working with now? Is it more athletes or is it more kind of retail clients?
It's all just like average Joes, retail clients. That's primarily what I work on right now. There's other people in the city that offer purely athletic programming. So if I had athletes, I just tend to refer them on to people who can service them a little bit better.
Yeah, man, I love what you were saying earlier, where you kind of took the principles of like the 1 rep max and that, and you gave them attainable goals. So like the weight loss became secondary, like it became almost unconscious. We're like, hey, hit this 80%, hit this 85%, hit this 90% of your 1 RM, and then kind of magically, without noticing, like the weight is going to fall away. I thought that was brilliant, man, because when I was working as a personal trainer, that was one thing I really struggled with. And I came from the same school of thought as you, right? It's periodization. It's based off the 1 RM. It's wattage. It's VO2 if you have access to that sort of equipment. But for the layman, it's kind of like someone comes to you and they just say, "Hey, man, help me lose weight." And it's how you get them to wrap their mind around weight loss without thinking about the weight.
So it's funny. So my kind of thing that I've really harped on people, even when I'm talking like about myself, is like weight loss or like muscle building should be effortless. Weight loss in particular, you shouldn't have to think about it. So it should just happen over time without the client feeling like they're doing a whole lot. And one of the techniques that's to use or tricks I use for that is like you're setting goals that incidentally lead to weight loss, right? As opposed to like directly lead to weight loss, I guess. So like, and we're not counting calories. You're not like, plugging everything into a food diary monotonous every day. I don't know how people hire like trainers who then like prescribe them 3 egg whites and a piece of turkey bacon for breakfast. And like, it's like, yeah, you'll lose weight, but like, is this like, what's the long-term strategy here? So like when it comes to resistance training, especially in women, having like chasing strength goals rather than weight loss goals are like incredibly favorable. Chatting with some women, and I'll use women in general, like we're talking on averages here. It's a little bit easier for men to be chunky in society than it is women, but like they feel like, so they have a number in mind in their head. That's the weight they want to be. And every day they're not at that weight is a failure. And then when they finally get to that weight, it's not even a success because like, well, I'm such a fat bitch. I should have been here all along. So there's no payout. There's no reward at the end. So instead of that, if you kind of flip that and every day provide like a micro success, no matter how small, if you're giving them a win every single day in some category, their self-esteem and self-efficacy regarding exercise tends to go up. So they'll start making better choices without you even having to direct them towards it, just because they're feeling more confident and feeling like more powerful about controlling their weight or controlling their body. I worked with one lady a number of years ago, she was very overweight, very sedentary. And I gave her one task, which was, hey, I just want you to take the stairs at work every day instead of taking the elevator. That was the only thing we changed. And she's like, that's easy. I'm like, all right, well, do it. So we did just that for 2 weeks, taking the stairs. And then I asked her, would she take a 30-minute walk 2 days at lunch? Again, super easy. Right? So now you got her walking the stairs every day. You got her taking 2 walks during the week. Zero weight loss, by the way. Zero weight loss at all here during this time. But she's like, that's a success every lunchtime, every morning and evening. You got a success, and now you got a success at lunch twice a week. From there, she added in a walk every day at lunch. So instead of doing 2 a day, she decided to do every day. So now you've got 3 successes: one in the morning, one in the evening, one in the middle of the day. From there, she started getting other women to walk with her at lunch, and then they organized a charity walk as a result of that. And so she's all of a sudden just adding more physical activity, adding better decisions to her life because she feels like she's in control of it. Most people who have lost weight or who need to lose weight have tried and failed any number of times. And the more you fail, the less likely you are to try again. So these people, you get the kind of the mantras of like, oh, nothing works for me. I've tried that. It doesn't work. It's like, dude, you haven't you're not an anomaly. You can't create matter out of nothing. So like things will work for you. It's more the mental block. So for someone like her, all of a sudden she's eating better, moving more without me even having to tell her, because she feels empowered, because she feels strong, because she feels confident as a result of these like micro successes along the way.
Right. So I think the great part though of oftentimes people need that accountability from someone, and sometimes it just takes that someone to be a stranger, like a personal trainer.
100%.
Of course, then they become friends and someone who, but that person keeps you accountable, right? So it reminds me a lot of when I was a kid and I used to take piano lessons. I really loved my piano teacher. She was a great lady. So I never wanted to disappoint her, right? So
Mhm.
partly, yes, I love playing piano, but there are some weeks you're a busy kid or you're just a kid and you're like, I don't really want to practice my scales. But you're
Yeah.
like, I need to practice enough so that next week it looks like I practiced for my piano teacher so that she's not disappointed in me, right? So
So
I find for a lot of people, if you get that kind of that new person in their life, just keeping them accountable, they have this slight consistent pressure to do something every day.
yeah, that's it. I kind of like where you're going with that. So like with that teacher, like I think there's two schools. You might have teachers out there where you're doing the bare minimum just to appease the teacher. Like, did your piano teacher make you want to play more piano?
Yeah, absolutely. She was great. She was one of my kind of favorite coaches in life, if I can
So
say that.
like if I kind of like flip that back then relate it back to like what I was saying about these people who had like, really positive things to say about my effect on their relationship with exercise. To me, that happened with a couple of instances, like maybe 10 contacts with these people, and I've like changed their life for the positive. It's a very dangerous position to be in then, because I'd be silly not to assume then that I might have had 5 or 10 negative interactions with somebody and subsequently ruined their relationship with exercise, right? If I approach things incorrectly, just as like some piano teachers have made kids hate piano, right? So
Right.
as a trainer, it's important. You're holding them accountable, but also you could tarnish or be the straw that breaks the camel's back regarding this person's relationship with exercise or with food. Um, so it's a role that you can't, even though it's a very low barrier to entry to get into the industry. It's a role that actually is quite important and shouldn't be taken lightly by instructors.
Yeah. And you really have to understand human motivation. I like how you go about you're keeping them accountable, but you're making them be accountable to themselves. And you're giving them all these little wins, all these positive feedbacks. And they're going to get that little dopamine hit of success, and they're going to want another one, and they're going to
Yeah,
want another one. And they're going to come to you. And little than they know that you just prescribe non exercise active thermogenesis, and they're burning calories. But
yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, you're feeling good. You did your walks. You went up your stairs. Hey, how about I teach you how to squat now? And now
yeah,
you're getting that spike of intensity, and you got the non-exercise active thermogenesis going, and now you're getting the endocrine response, and now you're developing strength, and now they're learning a new skill, and now they have essentially a new friend to know that they can hang out with for an hour.
100%.
That's brilliant.
It's yeah, like I often tell people, like, I'm training you so that you do not need me, right? Like if I do my job well, like you should be equipped with tools where like you no longer need me, but you stay because we've developed a relationship. Um, I think like yeah, that's kind of it. Like that's like you want people to be like to feel good and be motivated and make the right decisions because they'll be happier for them, not because they have to, right? So that's kind of it. And then yeah, like you said, like teaching people new skills. Like I couldn't believe how many people got like super fired up when we did like pre and post testing. We did squat, bench, and deadlift, or like trap bar deadlift, and we did predictive max testing. And you see people take like what was their predicted 1 rep max and hitting it for like 12 to 15 repetitions on the first retest. And a lot of that comes from like they're afraid of the weight the first time they test, right? Because they've never lifted anything like this. Like they're not like it's not that like they're in any danger, but like they'll pick up a weight, and if I asked them to do it 15 times or 6, they would pick the same weight, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get them comfortable being strong, and then you come back to like, okay, well, I did a 210-pound deadlift for 2 reps the first day, and then I took 225 and I did it for 15 reps the second time around. I haven't made them that much stronger. They're just now more comfortable and more confident and a little bit more competitive with themselves to actually see where they can go. And it's cool to see people have that type of response to training.
And then you get like a true baseline of what they do when you get that second testing. Like, okay, yeah, you dipped your toe into the pool the first time. Now you know how to wait around. Now let's really see how fast you can get to the other side of the pool.
Yeah. Well, imagine with that, like these people are typically under training, right? Like people in group fitness environments, they're coming in and we're just getting them to move, right? They're not. So when you test them like that, and then you retest them, and you show them what their true max is, and you go, okay, well now you got to use this X number of weight for 10 reps, right? Before that would have been unheard of for them, like the load that they're lifting. So now they end up like really feeling the workouts. But then they also see significant adaptations as a result of that. So they're actually training hard as
And
opposed to
yeah,
just moving.
Yeah,
but it's only.
Oh, go ahead, Will.
Sorry, I was just gonna say it's only. And Jason had the fancy term. I didn't study in this like you guys, but when you are maxing out or coming close to maxing out, actually having a productive workout, especially if it has to do with strength conditioning,
Yeah.
then afterwards your body is still exercising in that sense, right? You're still burning those calories, you're still recovering. Whereas I find if it's someone who's not comfortable enough to push themselves at all when they go to, quote unquote workout, then the only workout they did was that, half an hour workout. It wasn't like I'm recovering while I'm sleeping. I'm recovering the next day because my body is aching in a good way.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. So like, I mean, that's probably one of the things that got quite popular is like the idea of Epoch or like, basically elevated like post-exercise oxygen consumption. It's not enough that you would worry about it in terms of like, you're not burning an extra 500 calories per day. But it certainly helps. I think the more the benefit is like if you're training hard enough to elevate Epoch, then the adaptations to training are just going to be better as opposed to the extra calories you're burning throughout the day. If that makes sense.
It's kind of like a nice bonus.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of that, what matters more when trying to burn fat? So we talked a bit about weight loss.
Uh-huh.
Is it exercise or monitoring caloric intake, or is it both, or is it something else?
So the single most important component is going to be like your energy balance, right? How do you make sure we're burning off more than we consume? And there's a really great pyramid for more on muscle building that like a guy called Eric Helms made, and essentially like it goes through the hierarchy of like what you need to change body composition, right? And it's kind of like the base is like your behavior, lifestyle. So like your energy balance is number one. Then it's your macronutrient ratio, so your carbs, proteins, and fats. Then it's your micronutrients, so your vitamins, minerals. Then it's nutrient timing, so what you eat before, after workout, what you eat throughout the day, and then it's supplements at the top.
And then like
right?
people might want to jump right to the top of the pyramid, like, oh man, should I take this supplement or that supplement? And you're like, no,
100%.
let's go down to the base of the pyramid. Let's make sure the foundation is right first.
Exactly. So, but when it comes to like what's more important, I'll kind of give you an example. Like, like last week I did a 15K run, like in the morning, about 90 minutes or so, like slow, steady. Based on like my weight and like the distance for that, it was about 1,500 calories burned, right? So you'll have in one school of coaches say, oh, like cardio you won't lose any weight doing cardio. It's like, well, if you're already reasonably fit and you can sustain kind of decent intensity for decent duration, you can make a crazy energy balance. So I basically added 3 meals to my day by doing a 190-minute easy run, right? If I didn't, I can eat an extra 1,000 calories for the day and still be at a loss at a point where I'm losing over a pound a week.
Yeah,
right.
I can back that up for sure. When I was doing cross country, my first 2 years of university, we were running 100 to 150K a week, and I was just shoveling calories down my mouth, but I was still losing weight.
Go ahead, Will.
Well, same. I'll just pile onto that. Same with cycling. When I was fairly serious into cycling, I mean, when I would train, it could be up to 200 kilometers a day for these big 200 plus kilometer trips a day. It was literally like, put in any calorie you can find into your mouth. Right
now, so it's easy for us to kind of then go from that and say, well, you know what? If I need to cut weight quickly, I'm just going to keep my cardio, like get a whole bunch of cardio in. But if you're like seriously overweight and sedentary, you won't be able to sustain any sort of intensity or duration to create enough deficit to have an impact, right? So in that case, like you have to look at the other side of that equation, which is energy intake, and it will be easier to modify energy intake to get that deficit than it will to exercise. In fact, it might just be better off not exercising at all because the stress on the joints and the impact that it had, like the inflammation from exercise and so on, might be too great that they won't be able to do anything. So you might just keep them sedentary, but reduce their caloric intake so that they start to lose weight. And then once a lot of the weight is off, you can start increasing the exercise or the amount of exercise they're doing.
Yeah. When you describe that person, I'm thinking someone who's north of say 300 pounds, like just roughly. And if I were to have say that client in front of me, I would almost want to start them out like in a group session in a pool, where there's less strain on the joints. They can twist and turn and bounce up and down a little bit. At least you're
Yeah.
getting a little bit of something. And
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead, man.
you exercise is still important, right? For those for numerous reasons. It's just like weight loss might not be the main focus from the exercise for people who need a lot of weight to lose.
Yeah, there's like a lot of base work to do before you can get to like, okay, go run 10K.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like that's easy. Like, so it's like exercise is great to burn fat if you're capable of doing enough of it. But otherwise caloric intake, and it just depends on the individual. Like,
so in terms of caloric intake, let's say someone is really starting out. So going to tell them to, go run 5 or 10K every day isn't possible. What are your tips to begin a healthy caloric intake strategy? And because we always look at diets, right? And diets to me are quite often not sustainable, especially if someone has a problem with food discipline in the first place.
Yeah.
It's great. Maybe for a month they shrink because they have this insane deficit in caloric intake. However, it's just not sustainable, right? It's not something they're going to be able to do forever. It's just also not fun. You kind of still want to enjoy what you put into your mouth once in a while.
Oh, dude. So like, this is the thing. Like, I see so many like endurance. Like, okay, if you're in bodybuilding and you need to control everything that goes into your body, like that's one thing, right? Okay, like you can't have salsa. You have to limit salt, whatever else. For most people though, people just want to be in like say for men, like they'll be happy at an 18% body fat, right? We don't need to be at a 6. And to get to an 18% body fat, you don't need to count calories, right? That's completely, you can, but you don't need to. So the first step in like getting people to lose weight is just teaching them what to eat and how to make a dish. Precision Nutrition, actually based out of Toronto, like it's Dr. John Berardi. And he recently sold it, but he basically, they invented, I guess, or kind of like really pioneered using your hands to decide what to eat. So like 2 fist-size servings of vegetables is what you should be having at every meal. 1 palm-size serving of protein should be at every meal. 1 to 2 thumb sizes of fats, so like nuts or avocado or whatever. So it's like a quarter of an avocado. And then 1 cupped handful of carbohydrates if you deserve it. Right, or like fruits or fruits in there, or like either starchy carbs like vegetables or even some fruits. And if you kind of create that visualization of this is what a meal should look like, then there's like any amount of creations that you can come up with regarding like that meal setup. And if people do that, they're going to lose weight without ever calculating a single calorie.
Do you let them have cheat meals once a week, twice a week, or like what's their recompense for it?
Well, cheat meals.
Did we strike a chord there, Brian?
No, I don't know. So it's like, one of my mentors always said, you can have carbs if you deserve them, and to deserve them, you need to be below 8% body fat. That was like his rule for athletes.
Wow, that's
okay.
That's right? A strict coach.
No, I know, right? And it's like that's more. He's a little bit hyperbolic. But like if you're like, you don't need like bowls full of pasta and rice and potatoes and breads like on a typical diet. You might feel like you like those things, but you don't necessarily need them for like your health, wellness, for cognitive performance, and so on. So the idea of like having a cheat meal, usually it's like a cheat meal maybe after some intense training sessions. If you need cheat meals because it helps you stay on track, that's great, because you need that like kind of like mental breaks. You're kind of like, being what you think of as strict all week long so that you can have something on the weekend that like, you feel like you deserve. That's good. But like, again, that means that the person's thinking that they're restricting themselves throughout the week, right? So you're spending most of your time, 80% of your time on like a constricted, like restrictive diet. I don't want people to feel like that. I feel like they should be enjoying what you're eating throughout the week, such that like when your cheat meal comes along, you're like, oh, it's like I'm doing so much, so well, so right. Why am I going to kind of like piss into the wind and have something super unhealthy at the other side of that?
Yeah, because you want your everyday meal to be like, yes, it's progress. It's helping me get to my goal. Whereas the cheat meal, if the cheat meal is your goal, then everything else you're doing is negative.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But also, it's like you can have like a couple of higher caloric meals like throughout the week if you want. Okay, again,
What does 8% body fat look like on someone?
on a woman, you're like that's terrifying. Uh, right, that's super low body fat. On a guy, like you're talking like that's a 12 pack almost, right? So like 12% body fat, you're seeing like you've probably got like you can see most of their abs. Okay, 15% there, you're kind of like 15 to 18%, you might have an outline of abs, and then anything higher than that, you're probably they still might look quite muscular, but you probably won't have defined mid. That's usually the easiest way to kind of determine it. So 8% is super low.
All
Right?
right.
Like I don't operate on like that carb restriction. I think it's a funny anecdote that someone is saying like you have to,
Yeah.
but I do like the idea of you have to earn your carbohydrates, right? Because like if you're not burning enough like muscle glycogen during exercise, and you don't need to replenish it from like simple carbs. Um, Whereas like if you are doing intense work, like so usually if I'm doing a lot of running or I'm trying to build muscle, yeah, like my carbohydrate intake is quite high in terms of like usually just like either tubers like potatoes and rice. And then if I'm trying to maintain or trying to lose weight, I keep eating the same, but I remove those food sources from my diet.
Right.
So
Because carbs is just raw energy pretty much. There's not a whole lot else there.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's not going to make me feel full. Okay, it's not going to kind of contribute. There's not really much of a hormonal response to it in a lot of ways. And if I'm just sitting on my ass all day, then it's going to increase. It's going to lead to increased fat storage. So I just take that off the meal, and everything else on the plate will look the same. And if you're a decent enough cook or you learn the right meals, like you're still excited about what you eat, right? It's not like chicken and broccoli. Like
Yeah, like the actors do before they try to drop down to 8% body fat for that, sweet ab shot.
yeah, that's fair. Like, I mean, that's your job is to that's your job,
Yeah.
right? Okay, you're going to do it. But for most people, yeah, like I just don't know how people live on a diet of like broccoli, brown rice, and grilled chicken. Like it's miserable.
Right.
Gotta
You
get
should
those
be
gains, man.
I was just going to ask just to finish off on the more the food and diet portion. What are
yeah
your thoughts on keto or any other type of, you can mention other diets. I know there's like the carnivore,
yeah
there are vegans around. So my wife and I actually recently tried keto for, she was probably better. She probably did it for 2 weeks. I did it for almost 2 weeks.
right
There's definitely a difference. I just don't know how sustainable it is because I find there's such a lack of sugar, even just for your taste buds. Not that I'm actually more of a savory guy, but once in a while, the fact that you can't have any form of sugar or carbohydrates is really tough. So yeah, what are your thoughts on diets like that?
well, so like first of all, you have to ask like what's your goal, right? So like what is your goal of being on this diet? Is it like improve clarity, okay, like in terms of like cognitive function? Is it improved body composition? Is it improved energy? Like what is the ultimate goal? Or is it just overall health, well-being? Like most of the time people want to feel healthier, maybe lose some body fat. That's like the most common goal, I think. So maybe we'll take that as an example. So the goal then is you need to be in a deficit and be able to stay in a deficit, right? So like any of these diets, like they all share similarities, right? Okay, like the ketogenic diet versus the carnivore diet. Like, would you be surprised to know the carnivore diet's well, it's probably higher protein, high fat for the most part, but also with vegetables, right? With some vegetables and with fruits. I don't know a whole lot. I follow the carnivore doctor or carnivore MD or whatever his name is on Instagram. It's like it's meats and veg, right? No one ever got fat eating meats and vegetables,
Yeah.
right? Right. The ketogenic diet, you're getting rid of bullshit from your diet, no sugars. Vegan diet, even more restrictive. You got like anyone who's on a vegan diet that I know, like they invest so much time and energy into making sure their diet provides everything they need. You can't sit back and argue that it's not healthy, right? There are vegan foods that are unhealthy, right? Like you go into any boxed food that comes in the grocery store in the middle aisles, right? Any cookies, any crackers, like they're vegan. But like most vegans aren't eating that type of diet, and you'd be silly to say they are. Just like most carnivore diets aren't eating lunch meat for every meal, right? Like there's meats there. The most important thing is that like so being able to mediate appetite is super important because like as smart as we all think we are, like we're still basically apes that are controlled by our biology, right? Everything, like we're completely controlled by our biology.
That's pretty controversial, Brian.
Right?
You're in good company, but we
Yeah,
won't put that section online.
okay, well, you know what? At least from a food intake standpoint, or physiologically, like what we want to eat is controlled by our biology.
We're kidding. Go ahead, man.
Yeah,
Right?
it's all good.
You fuckers. So like in terms of eating, like like we're controlled by our hormones in terms of like, am I hungry? Am I feeling full? Right? It's not like your stomach gets to the top and you're like, okay, my stomach's full. Let's send the signal. Like that's part of it. But like if you look at the two basic ones, they'll kind of keep it pretty surface level. But like you've got like one hormone, ghrelin, which is going to increase sensations of hunger, right? So if ghrelin is elevated, you're going to feel hunger. If leptin is elevated, on the other side, you're not going to feel hungry. Okay? And the type of food you eat does have, the type of exercise you do has an impact on that. The type of food you eat has an impact on that. So like high protein reduces ghrelin, high fat increases leptin. Okay, so those two things, you're going to feel full. If you feel full, you're not going to eat as much. So like a ketogenic diet, you're probably not going to feel as hungry as if you ate the same amount of calories from just a high carb diet.
What about gut bacteria? How does that play a role in modulating a hormonal response?
Okay, we'll come back to let me think on that for a moment, because it does have a response in there. I'm not like I should just go get Dr. Rhonda Patrick to talk on that. So I think because she's like the gut flora like wizard. I know like I do not know enough about like the gut microbiome and its effect on dietary. I know it plays a role. Okay, I just don't know what signals are being sent to tell you whether or not to eat more.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with my knowledge too. One thing I do notice though is when you change food habits, is that you tend to crave the food you just cut out for a little while.
Well, yeah, so like that's related to your like basically what digestive enzymes you have. So your gut microflora, like your body is incredibly efficient at adapting to its to its diet, I guess, or to the environment you place it in. So if you're eating high sugar, like your body, you can be damn sure you're better at digesting and processing carbohydrate. If you eat high fats, you become more oxidative. You're able to burn more fats. So I think when you shift your diet or have a drastic change, all of a sudden you've got this kind of like system that's set up to burn one type of fuel or whatever, one types of food, and then those are gone. Say, well, what the fuck do we do with all these resources? Like these are here, we built this for you, and now you're changing up the rules. So then it takes a while for your body to adapt to that new food environment. I think it's like on the diet side of things in there, like whether you're on high fat, high protein, high fiber, okay, so like fruits and vegetables, they're all pretty similar at controlling sensations of hunger. If you're on a high fructose diet, you get increases in ghrelin, decrease in leptin, which leads to increased caloric intake, which leads to weight gain, right? So high sugar diets are what are going to make you fat as opposed to like any of the others. And like, it's no surprise that all these diets that have success, they just cut out bullshit, right? And we all know what bullshit foods are or should. We just need a diet and a book, right, to tell us, and then we follow it. And then also to provide us with a solution, right? Like I don't have the tools to make the food that doesn't have sugar in it and so on. So I need a tool book or a guide that's going to help me make things that I enjoy, that don't make me feel hungry, that get me away from that sugar addiction.
Man, chocolate chip cookies are so good though.
Oh, dude, right? Yeah, you got like that. Actually, Canada took a big step. Was it last year? They banned trans fats in food.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of nice. Yes, like Doritos and stuff like that have to come up with like a new recipe for Canada because we're trying to control trans fats, which is pretty sweet.
So basically, when you dive into the world of personal training, you almost have to become a dietitian at the same time to be able to give the whole approach. Because if you're just giving the exercise portion to a retail client, you're kind of only giving them half of the tools they need.
100%. Actually, you're probably giving them less than half, right? Like you're like the exercise is such an easy component. The nutrition is really where it's difficult, and then it's a bit of a gray area because like, as a certified personal trainer, you actually are able to provide guidance on nutrition, but you're not really supposed to prescribe nutrition plans unless you've got a certification of some form of for nutrition.
Dietitian or something, yeah.
Yeah. So like you can be a registered nutritionist, and then dietitian, you got to be a little bit more kind of deep thinking. But then I think for like the dietitians out there, I think it's more like I almost feel like they're underserving their purpose if they're just working with the average person to like tidy up their diet, right? Because they're like their knowledge is going to be more in like the microbiology side of things, dealing with chronic disease, dealing with like food intolerances and so on, as opposed to going out and telling people to eat their vegetables, right? So I think like I've had conversations with some nutritionists, and they think that like trainers should probably stay in their lane a little bit more. And then I've had other ones where it's like, no, it's great. Like you guys take care of like that surface level content, because like what we're just discussing there about like, you know, like the like diet types and like food groups, like that's pretty surface level, and let us take care of the more specialized issues.
Yeah, because I work at a hospital, and there's an army of dietitians that work there, but they're working with oncology patients, renal patients, all these sort of things where
Yeah.
they're immunocompromised. There's something happening there where they're not worried about running 10K and deadlifting 225. It's just let's get the proper micronutrients and macronutrients in to deal with what's happening here. But for the person who's on a weight loss journey or weight gain or whatever it may be, you give them that surface level, and it's the vast majority of what they need there. And the rest is just the mindset that you're able to instill into them.
100%. Like I think the nutrition should be easy. And then also like I go nuts because like I go back and forth with some of the profs at the college, even doctors. Like I'm a huge advocate of like certain supplements. And other people are like, oh, we get enough. And it's like, you realize that like, the recommended daily intakes for like certain vitamins are the minimum you need to hit to not have a deficiency. Right?
So what are your big recommendations for supplements?
Generally we'll go like vitamin D. Although I got like a vitamin D overdose on the weekend, I'm like still rolling.
I mean, that's because of your Irish skin.
Yeah. So I'm really efficient at producing vitamin D, right? Absorbing vitamin D. That's the benefit of having super pale skin. But usually like vitamin D, fish oil, multivitamin, mineral. After that, then you maybe go into like zinc and magnesium. They tend to be quite deficient in people, but you also have to be careful because now you're getting into ones that are easily able to take like an overdose of, which is to be quite considerate of. One sec. We got a guest. Sorry.
Is it your cat?
It's one of the ladies at the house. Oh, she's coming in.
Oh.
The girlfriend's got to make sure to go for a run. So like zinc, magnesium, but I tend to not recommend those to everybody. That will usually go through like their doctor. Or I'll recommend they get tested to see if they're deficient, because most of us on a Western diet are. So that would be like the 5, like vitamin D, fish oil, multivitamin, zinc, magnesium, and then maybe a probiotic to help with digestion. But some people couldn't be bothered with those.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I just do omega-3s and 1 a day for men.
Okay, that's kind of getting in there.
What about recovery, Brian? So we talked about exercise, talked about diet, but you hear more and more that recovery is super underrated. And you hear like things like very basic things like sleep. And this is the thing I'd be bad at. Not that I do everything religiously, but I keep in shape. I work out quite regularly. I have a somewhat healthy diet, I would say, but in the sleep department, I'm just crap. So sleep, and what are your other recommendations for recovery?
Oh man, like sleep hygiene is brutal. Like I think that's one of the biggest issues like in our society at the moment, because it's just like phone slapped in front of your face till like 2 a.m, and you're like, oh, why can't I sleep? Right? Like
I like that sleep hygiene. It makes you feel.
That's the first.
It makes me feel dirty. I have bad sleep hygiene, guys.
Yeah, we do, right? Like that's exactly it. Like we really like don't take care of our sleep very very well. Usually like the first couple of rules, like for me, are like, okay, like let's ease up on the caffeine addiction. Like I feel like we still celebrate the caffeine addiction. Like it's something to be proud of. Like it's still kind of trendy to be a coffee enthusiast. Like how many people's Instagram bios are like part-time adventure, full-time coffee drinker, right?
Dude, that's every female Tinder profile right there.
Right. So it's like, okay, we still really like, why is it so trendy? Like, I love coffee. But I used to drink way too much of it because at work we had like an espresso machine and I would just be crushing espresso. It'd be 6 p.m. I'm like, why am I feeling like so run down? So one of the first things that I do is it's like no caffeine 7 hours before you plan on going to sleep, right?
Wow, okay.
So that's like the first thing. Even better to get rid of it. No coffee afternoon. Okay, like keep it as a morning thing. That will be one of the first things that you do. So like pre-workouts, like maybe go for if you're working out in the evening, like a stimulant-free pre-workout if you want to spend your money on that. So that'd be the first thing. Second thing is like screen time, right? Like the more screen time you get in the evening, the longer it takes for you to fall asleep. Blue light, essentially. So if you think of in the evening, as it gets darker, as it gets cooler, our body starts to release melatonin, which makes us feel kind of sleepy, and then we fall asleep. Blue light in particular inhibits melatonin production. So it'll take longer for you to feel drowsy, and then it'll take longer for you to fall asleep. So if you have like your laptop out, or you have your TV on, or you have your phone out, you're inhibiting that melatonin production. So like either going at least turn your phone on to night mode, or just try to get rid of your screen altogether for the hour before bed. That will improve it. Reading, I came across one day, one of the coaches saying like, if you're watching TV, don't watch TV shows that have lots of faces in it because it keeps your mind active and attentive. It keeps like the communication processes in your brain going. Whereas if you watch like documentaries style like nature, go watch Planet Earth.
I was gonna say watch March of the Penguins every
right.
night.
It's like all of a sudden like that's switched off. I haven't seen any data on that, but like anecdotally it does kind of make sense. So usually like cut out caffeine, screen time off. And then there's some interesting stuff that I've got more into lately on so I do breathing exercises, but also gratitude journals. Keeping track of like what you're grateful for has a direct impact on quality of sleep, both in how quickly you fall asleep and how long you stay asleep for. I don't know the processes of why, but I know that it does work.
I noticed that if I do like a 5 to 10 minute meditation session right before bed, not necessarily in bed, but just, the last few minutes I'm sitting on the couch before I go brush my teeth, I'll fall asleep quicker. I'll have a more restful sleep, and I'll dream more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Like it's like I'm really like I don't meditate quite well, but I do a lot of breathing exercises. I find that those are quite beneficial. I think that for a lot of us, we're basically just in like fight or flight or freeze all the time. Like our sympathetic nervous system is just in overdrive all the time. My girlfriend's like addicted to reality TV shows during like quarantine, and like when I walk into the room, I can feel myself get anxious just watching that TV show because they're like these people are turned up to 11 all the time, and then like I'm absorbing that, and then I gotta lie down and go to sleep. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I'm ready to fight someone, right? As a response, and I do think I'm like this has to like slow down my ability to get to sleep.
Yeah.
So meditation and breathing exercises, like they're going to increase parasympathetic drive. So you're going to like bring yourself back. You're going to basically down regulate, get yourself ready to go to sleep. Like if I'm afraid of being attacked by a lion, I'm not going to sleep, right? So like if my system is primed, okay, for fight or flight, like I'm not sleeping.
It's funny you say that. Our last episode was on the mental diet, and that was one of the big things, right? It's being cognizant of what you're putting in between your ears, and if the last thing you're seeing before going to bed is something that's stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, well, what's the first order, second order, third order, fourth order consequence? Well, the first order is you're going to have a hard time falling asleep. Then the next day, maybe you're a little short with your client because you're tired. And then you're not going to get a referral. And then it's going to affect your business, right? And it's all these things you don't necessarily think about, but it happened because you watched Survivor before going to bed.
Hey, Survivor is not bad, actually, compared to all the other reality shows.
Well, you were about to say something. I think we both cut you off.
Well, no, I was actually going to say exactly what Jason said, is that we pre-recorded a mental diet, which will actually come out the week after your feature, Brian.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not just the physiology of what screens do to you and blue light. It's also the psychology of especially like social media or like Twitter, all that crap, right? It just makes you stressed out. And why
Well,
would you read that 30 seconds
junk
before you try to
food,
fall
but it's
asleep?
like it's junk food for your mind, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
we all like it, but like that's where it is. Like we all hear now, it's like how addicting all of this is, and it's like, yeah, like it's like the adrenaline rush is addicting, right? That's why people keep wingsuiting, even though they know like their peers are dying. It's addicting, and I think to the same extent, like that's why reality TV is addicting. That's why like social media is addicting, because it's constant dopamine boosts.
Yep.
But yeah, like for you, I don't know if you're on the phone at night, Will, but like that off, like any breathing work, like you can do the Wim Hof breathing, like that's what I tend to use, or just like either box breathing, like 5 seconds in, 5 second hold, 5 second out, 5 second hold. There's like 4-7-8s. My girlfriend goes nuts because like I will be asleep like within maybe 2 minutes of lying down to go to bed.
That's my wife too.
And she's like, how the fuck? I'm like, well, because I don't have any, I'm not on my phone. I don't watch TV, like generally before bed. So I just like lie down. I'm like, I'm out, gone.
I think that's a man thing, because men in general tend to fall asleep pretty quick compared to
Well,
women.
I think we're also like, we're stupid,
Not
right?
me.
Like we kind of just trundle through life. We don't stay up worrying about anything generally, right? We're too stupid for that. Whereas they're intelligent brains. They're thinking about all the repercussions that they had, right? And then you once in a while wake up hungover.
And you're like, if there's a saber-toothed tiger to this attack, I'll grab a stick and poke it. Whatever.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
So
we're
Brian,
meant to be.
So Brian, speaking of men and women, when you have clients come into your gym, typically, we talked about like the general get healthier, weight loss, but do you see differences between the motivation behind or the reasons behind why women will want to get training or lose weight and versus men?
So,
or do they often share those stories with you?
People often share their stories with me. I think I'm also like, I can kind of look through rose tinted glass, because most of the people who come into our facility are not in need of like rapid weight loss or serious weight loss anymore. They're people who are pretty active and they're using this to supplement their active lifestyle. Obviously people want to lose weight. The most common ones that I see with men, so I said I think being a guy, men tend to kind of like you tend to kind of like want to work with people who have similar or shared life experiences with you. A lot of the men I work with, in particular in like their mid 40s onwards, have kind of lived the life of where, went to university, got a job, and then started putting on 2 to 5 pounds a year, right? For you put on 2 pounds a year for 15 years, all of a sudden you're fat, right? You put on 5 pounds a year, you're obese. And 5 pounds in a year is not difficult to do. And so they have their career, they're focused on that. Then they have kids, they focus on their kids. And then all of a sudden, their kids are starting to get a little bit older, a little bit more independent. And they're like, oh man, like their doctors are, this is both men and women, like doctors are telling you now you're unhealthy, you got blood pressure issues, you get a heart disease runs in your family. And now it's time to do something about it, because they don't want to be like, working themselves to an early grave. So a big thing that I see with men and women is like trying to be healthier for their kids, because family was their priority for so long that they put their health on the back burner. And if you want to keep your health at the forefront while raising a family, you do what others of my clients do, which is they're up at 4:30 getting training done before their kids even wake up, right? But like that's a huge ask for most people. Like you got to be wired a little bit differently to be willing to do a 2-hour workout on the bike before the rest of your family wakes up or even knows you're doing it, right? So
yeah, and that speaks a lot to just kind of the state of society today, where you need a two-parent or a two-person income to support a household, and it just everything is easier and more convenient, but at the same time harder.
Oh, dude, it's nuts! It's absolutely nuts. Like I was just like my girlfriend and I are both like we're searching for a house, and it's like, dude, we're both on great incomes, okay, and it's like, why are we like? Obviously, we're kind of like got our restrictions in terms of where we want to live, but it's like you got two people earning a great living, and your options are to move way out to the suburbs to buy a home. And you're like, I thought we set ourselves up for success, and that's kind of the norm in a city like Ottawa right now, right? Like that's kind of problematic. But yeah, I think one thing that we kind of saw was going to change that was the work from home, right? All of a sudden, you get your commute back. You're kind of at home with your kids, you're at home with your family. So you got all this extra time, like maybe to yourself or to your family, but also like the data got published, like the data's already been published, like BMI is up. Okay. So body mass is up. Screen time is way up. And so on. I think like the opportunity to be more active, right, is there right now, but people don't have the tools.
So what's the role of discipline right now? If someone has a few more hours in the day because of the lowered commute time or the work from home or the shortened days, how do you train that discipline to get them going?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, you have to combat their work, because now all of a sudden you've got an extra 30 minutes or 45 minutes on each side of work where your bosses are almost expecting you to be involved for that time, right? Also, then like you're available on email at all day, every day. So it doesn't happen for me, but I know like I've friends like who are working where like they're basically now working more than ever.
Mm.
So I think like the first and foremost thing is like, dude, if you drop off the face of the earth tomorrow, your work won't give a flying fuck. Like there'll be people that will miss you, right? So I think like, I don't think people are selfish enough when it comes to like themselves and their health, right? Like we think that like contributing this extra bit to work will pay off, and maybe it will, maybe it won't. But like I think establishing boundaries with your employer is one of the most important parts. Is like, I'm available from 9 to 5, right? I'm not responding to anything else outside of that. And it can be quite idealistic, but I know for me, like that's what I try. I know when I'm available, I know when I'm not available, and I try to encourage people to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
one of my clients just lives across the road, and he's like, dude, he's like, every day now I get up, I feed my son, right? And then I go for a walk with him. He's like, I could never do that before. He's like, then I do my emails. He's like, then I get a workout in after I've done my emails, and then I get my work rolling. And it's like, he kind of has that there, but you just have to prioritize yourself, because there's always that mental to-do list of shit that you have to get done for work.
Yeah, I think there's there is absolutely more time for a lot of people who have been fortunate enough to keep their job in these lockdowns.
If you lost your job, you got all the time in the world to be fit.
Yeah, you do. That's true, but only for so long, I guess. But for those folks, they have much more time to do that. But then it also becomes a lot more difficult because there is that kind of aspect where if you're not disciplined enough, you can sink into that laziness pretty fast.
Oh, dude, it's bad. Like, it's so easy to sit around doing nothing. So I think like for me, like the big ones that I do, is like, you got to begin the day with a success, like whatever that success is. So like my morning ritual, like when I wake up, is like breath work, and then shower, usually end with a cold shower, and then coffee, and figure out what I'm doing. Kind of start like checking off my to-do list. And then second is like, so like a morning ritual like provides you with something that like marks a success. Then it's to-do list, like what is on your to-do list that you have to get done. And like there should be some form of like, be outside for an hour. Okay, like that's like not even exercise, just get the fuck out of your house, because it's so easy to stay indoors all day every day. And just being outside, like in Ottawa, like I can walk to the Arboretum or walk to the canal. Just by being outside, mood goes up, self-esteem goes up, optimism goes up, right? Just from being outside. So like those things in and of themselves are beneficial.
That's one thing that's just, I find, killing me with these whole lockdowns, and the encouragement of people having to stay inside. Encouragement is putting it lightly. But the fact, like, no one's talking about vitamin D and fresh air and all these things. Whereas like, if you actually want a healthy population, can we talk about, weight loss, healthy diet, and yes, a very, very easy one, which is go outside.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's like the government's fighting against that right now.
Never mind, and add social isolation on top of that.
Yeah. So with that though, I like playing devil's advocate on this one, because up until COVID, like a minuscule percentage of the population exercise, right? You're supposed to get like, 30 minutes a day of activity. That's not exercise, right? So you got to get like, basically your 3 to 5 hours a week of physical activity, which is like gardening, walking. And like 78% of the population don't meet that requirement, right? Most people don't eat well. So like from a government standpoint, it's like, why the fuck would I put money into telling everyone to be active and healthy when they're not going to do it anyway? We've been investing so much money in that prior to COVID, in terms of like, reinventing the food pyramid, okay, like kind of updating that, like coming up with these minimal requirements. And 30 minutes a day to an hour a day is enough to not get out of shape. It's not enough to improve health. So like, if I had all the money to spend, would I invest it into that when like people are just not going to listen anyway? It becomes a difficult situation. Those who are already active and eating healthy and getting vitamin D are doing more of it now because they know it's important. But I don't know if people who are not interested in that, who are not ready to make a change, I don't know if they're going to be edged towards it or not.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I do think that it's pretty easy and cheap for a government or any body to tell people go outside. Like vitamin D is something we don't talk about in fighting like basic viruses and bacteria, and just boosting your immune system. So the fact that even not even just like lose weight or whatever it is, it's just like, hey, go sit outside for a few minutes every day. Make sure you get that vitamin D onto your skin. That's a big and easy and free fix, really. And you can still be as lazy, the laziest guy.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But then I also don't know if, because some of it's correlation and causation, right? Those who are active and are outdoors have higher vitamin D, right? But then also it's like, so vitamin D, like people have, like supplementation is a little bit ambiguous as to whether it improves mental health, but doing activities that increase vitamin D, so being outside, hiking, biking, like walking, just being outdoors, has quite a profound effect, but not just because improved vitamin D status. But in my opinion, like people should be outside, people should be active. I think right now the issue is like, it's just so, you're supposed to stay at home, but then be outside. And like, I don't know, people can't be trusted at all levels of society. I can't trust that you can't trust that government's operating with your best intentions or best intentions for you. And then also, like a buddy of mine recently, like kind of when everything was open, was having drinks in his backyard. He's like, it's so stupid. Does COVID like magically disappear after 10 p.m.? And I was like, dude, the last time I was drinking with you, by about 11:30, you were licking my face, right? So it's like the reason we have to close the bars early is because the shirts come off, your tie goes around your head, and you start like, jumping on your buddy's shoulders.
Just like how nature intended.
Yeah, because you can't trust people to behave responsibly. So like, I do see like those sides.
So Brian, before we let you go here, where can people find you? Where can they find you online if they want some consulting or some training?
Probably the best way is find me on Instagram, probably like Brian Kehoe Fit. There's a website I'll be releasing shortly, but that's not up yet. You can find me on my LinkedIn, Brian Kehoe. You'll see the Irish mug on there. I think that's about it. Sneak up to the college, but I won't be on campus anymore. I'll work from home.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll make sure to link you in our post this week as well when it comes out.
All right, on.
So thanks a lot for taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Great way to start the day. Have a great one.
Gonna go for a run after this.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, get some sun, guys. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. As always, you can find us wherever podcasts are found. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Don't forget, you can check us out at our social media on Instagram at The Independent Mindset. Have a good one.